I've seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me
Wake up! My parents fly back today! Who are you?
Who are you?
Oh, she! Get these glasses! Come on, you stupid thing!
Oh, no!
Oh, hello, French polishers. It's just possible you could save my life. Mom, just landed. Oh, quiet. I'm on my way.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast, brought to you by the Scottish Rugby Blog. You'll notice it's only Sandy here this week with me. Hello, Sandy.
Hello, good evening.
Do you think the other two, after the given what's happened, do you think they've just shied away from wanting to talk, have a week talking about nothing but Edinburgh?
Yeah, they obviously couldn't stand the humiliation, and have allowed the East Coast to assume control.
You will notice we opened there with the French polisher advert from the Yellow Pages, because I was on holiday last week and I had a nice week off, stayed at home with the kids and the wife, and we had a nice wee break. And I left John in charge, and not 24 hours after the podcast had been broken, but we were banned from Facebook. The entire Scottish Rugby Blog page has been removed from Facebook. We don't know why. I don't think anybody said anything untoward on the podcast, but there you go. That's where we are. We've been banned by Mark Zuckerberg himself. So I leave the kids alone for 1 week, and we incur the wrath of Mark Zuckerberg. But you can still get in touch with us on Facebook. We've set up a new page, which is Scottish Rugby Podcast. So we're on there. So if you want to find us, it's mainly just going to be for broadcasting this, if we're honest. But it's worth following, and then you can see when live broadcasts are going to come up. And we're on Twitch as well, Scottish Rugby Podcast, YouTube, Scottish Rugby Blog. You can visit the blog as well, scottishrugbyblog.co.uk, for all the latest articles, news, views on Scottish rugby. I've just had one on this week, which we'll probably touch upon in a bit. You can email us, podcast@scottishrugbyblog.co.uk. And you can also find us on Twitter @ScottRugbyBlog, and I'm @Cammy Black. What we are doing tonight, we've got a different, you'll notice a little different format tonight for those of you watching this live, where we are using some new software. You can see some banners scrolling along the bottom, inviting you to comment. In theory, if this all works out, Sandy and I can interact with you live tonight. So if you make any comments during the podcast, if you think Sandy or I have said something absolutely outrageous, please let us know. And so long as the language is clean, we'll pop it up on the screen and we'll answer any questions you've got. So please give that a go. Hopefully it'll work. We're keen to test that out. We're keen to try and make this a bit more interactive with everyone that watches. So we're also on Patreon. So if you want to subscribe to us on Patreon, you can do. So it's patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast. We will, for the £3 a month, you get into the Richie Vernon Thunderdome. And when you're in the Richie Vernon Thunderdome, you can enjoy some exclusive content. So we're trying to put out an exclusive one episode a week that's exclusive and not available elsewhere. You can also get ad-free versions of the podcast as well. You can also get into our super secret Facebook group where we give you little behind-the-scenes sneak peeks and little advance warning of stuff that we're going to do as well. If you pay £5, though, you get into the Dougie Donnelly Members Lounge. And I forgot to tell John last week, we have had a new entrant into the lounge because for £5 a month, you get your name read out on the podcast. So we welcome in, of course, the beard of Scottish Rugby, Ian himself, Ian Wallace. We should also mention as well that Ian is I think just over a week away from no longer being the beard of Scottish Rugby, being the former beard of Scottish Rugby, and shaving it all off in the name of My Name's Doddy. So if you visit the podcast post on the blog tomorrow, we'll stick his Just Giving details up there. It's all in a good cause. If you haven't heard of Ian, you'll have seen him because he's in every single bit of SRU and Edinburgh promo footage ever, just wandering about Murrayfield. He's hard to miss, is Ian. So that's all for a good cause. Ian kind of grew up with Doddy. They both came from Stow. And then look, here we go, and he's joining us now. There he is. Look, Ian Wallace. There he is. I can pop his little face up on screen as well. Look, hello, Ian. With sunglasses.
It's a clean message.
It's a very clean message. Thank you for that, Ian. It's much appreciated. So yes, so you please do that. Sandy, we need to get on with business tonight. So the first things first, Scotland have launched a new kit, which is quite exciting.
Indeed.
I guess
It's and very simple, and to be honest, I wasn't so keen on the training things with the training tops with what looked like shoulder holsters, or the gold bit on the shoulders. I thought they were a bit odd, but the actual playing shirt I think is not too bad at all. A wee touch of gold there, and it's quite simple. Otherwise, I mean, there's the usual grumps about macron sizing and logos and such like, but we could do with going back to Canterbury, though. That's the thing. Or sorry, that one.
Is that what you got the shirt on tonight? Is the show one-man campaign?
In honour of Canterbury shirts that actually fit the fuller figure.
No, I mean, it's nice to see a return to the collar. I like that. I think I'm always upset whenever they don't have collars.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a rugby shirt should have a collar. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I know when I played, I always used to have it tucked in the kind of thought that it would stop somebody grabbing it. Now the rules stop that.
Yeah. We've got a comment there. Look, Chloe Stanton on YouTube says, I thought the gold was bogan in the 2011 kit, but it works well this time. And I think that's fair enough. I think that's a fair comment.
I would agree with Chloe there.
the little yellow detail on the back, I'm not sure what that is. I don't know if that's so you can, like a GPS thing. It looks like a little duck's bill poking out the bottom of the back of the shirt. I'm not sure. That's the only bit I'm not sure about.
Oh, I missed that, to be honest, yeah.
And I did enjoy the fury of everybody, the small minority of Scotland fans immediately just like, where's the tartan? We demand tartan and freedom on our rugby shirts.
Has there ever been tartan in a Scotland shirt? Or, I mean, probably there was actually one shirt, I remember.
I did with the World Cup.
World Cup. Wee bits down the side, yeah.
There is some, I think. If you look very closely, and the back, the very bottom panel at the back, it's very faint, kind of tartan plaid pattern on it. The one thing that I did think was nice is an interesting, given the current climate, was the whole marketing campaign for it. And I've done a blog post on that over on the blog, which if you've got a few minutes is worth reading. It's a bit of a long, rambling one from me, but I struggled to kind of get all my thoughts together in any kind of coherent form. But they've kind of launched it with the slogan of the threads that bind us. And very prominently within the kind of main image promoting it, you've got two black fans in between Adam Hastings and Darcy Graham, like front and center, which I think is very positive. It's nice to kind of have that representation. Gingers are also represented before people get upset.
And
there is a ginger man with a beard. Yeah, it's not Graham Love.
No.
Unfortunately, sadly for Graham, who was most upset by that.
Yeah.
But it was nice. And the only disappointing thing I think is that they'd used Megan Gaffney to launch the women's shirt, which is absolutely fantastic. And given what had happened with Ireland the week previous, where they'd used models instead of players, which sparked a bit of a backlash, understandably so. It's disappointing, I think, that the women's shirt isn't available to buy, because I think the point I made in the article is if you like to see yourself reflected in heroes, you like to dress up as your heroes. It's no different to, Marvel making Captain America and Spider-Man costumes available, but saying, well, we're not going to produce Black Panther costumes. It'd be absolute outroar if that happened. So that's a bit disappointing, Sandy.
Yeah, and to be honest, it is a bit of a failure because, and I meant to look earlier today to see, but specifically to do with international shirts, because it's the same story with Edinburgh. There is no female tops in the range for Edinburgh stuff, and at the time when I noticed that, I had a wee look, and there is other clubs with Macron tops that are able to get women's fit shirts. So all it is, or you would imagine, all it is a change of pressing a different program on the production line to get the right colours. So if they've already got the cuts, so why not? Why should the Scotland shirt not be one? Why should the Edinburgh shirt not have it? I think it's a big part of the demographic, and I think it's a failure. It's a failure commercially, but it's a failure in terms of inclusivity as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think some people might want to choose to wear a men's fit shirt, but other people might be more comfortable in a women's fit shirt. And I think the point I made in the article is if demand is the concern from a financial point of view, then it can't be hard to do a limited run. And if that sells out, then you've got demand.
Well, I mean,
you
that's
can't test
really
these things until you do it, can you?
I mean, that's really what because it's not. I mean, Macron clearly do women's cut tops, so how hard can it be to take one colour off the production line and put a different colour on it just in order to produce a few for everybody? It just seems a bit of a mess, to be honest, and poor.
I've heard a rumour that the women's shirt is on its way, and that it's been delayed due to issues with manufacturing. So if that's true, then full credit to the SRU. And I think if that is true, then I would have liked to have seen that in the press release. I think everybody would have found that helpful to have seen that there was a commitment to produce it, but everyone would understand at the minute that it wasn't coming out anytime soon.
I mean, potentially I wonder whether that decision is because they want folk to buy a shirt now, rather than regardless whether it's a male fit shirt or not. Because we need money, give us it now, and then they may buy a women's shirt later on as well.
Well, that's true. Yeah, double up. I don't know what kind of cut they get from the merch. That'd be interesting to know. Kind of how much of a markup there is on the shirts. So how much Macron get and how much the SRU get directly. That'd be interesting to know. I mean, they're not cheap. It
can't be insubstantial. I mean, it would have been. I've always thought that you should have probably got a discount in the shop at Murrayfield for being a season ticket holder, but that's never appeared. So perhaps the margins are not as good as what they would hope. So and there's perhaps not enough room to even give a discount to those that have put their hand in their pocket already. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's there. It's a nice strip. I like it. I think the Sevens strip, less said about that, the better. I don't really understand what's going on there.
It's a bit odd.
It's like some sort of the kind of thing you'd see after about 10 pints.
Yeah, on what was a white shirt at one point.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the shirts. And like I said, there's an article on the blog that I've written looking more about kind of what the SRU could be doing aside from just marketing campaigns to increase inclusivity in rugby, not just the SRU, but rugby at large. Kind of tried to draw a line under some of the discussions we've had over the past few weeks on the podcast, but no doubt we'll end up talking about it again at some point in the future. I'm going to now this, Andy. You've got there's no John and Ian aren't here. This is a Glasgow free zone tonight because, and I love this. This is why Richard Cockrell is just. I love Richard Cockrell, who when somebody pointed out to him, Fraser Brown was moaning about the scrums. Richard Cockrell turns around and says, "Well, he's on holiday, isn't he?"
So I'm not going to say what he likes,
which was fantastic. So we've got
it's definitely dropped the mic, isn't it?
Yeah, Edinburgh in a quarterfinal, and that I don't think for all the talk I think we had of there being a star or an asterisk next to whoever wins this season. Let's not kind of underplay what a fantastic season Edinburgh have had, because even when it came to shutdown, Edinburgh were already in a very strong position. Was it top of the pool at lockdown?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no,
and clear by some margin as well.
Yeah, well, they're not hugely ahead, or weren't hugely ahead of Munster, but having beaten them earlier in the season, they were obviously that was the difference between the two teams. So, point of order, though, semi-final, please.
Is it a semi?
Yeah.
Am I getting confused?
Yeah, they've done away with the quarterfinals because
that was that'd be the fifth playoff, wouldn't it? So semi-final, straight into the semis.
Straight into the semis, yeah.
And again, would that have happened? Because that would have, if they'd finished top of the pool,
if they'd finished top, they would have went
straight in anyway. So yeah. So again, I would. It's let's not underplay it. I don't think lockdown has had any part to play in that. Edinburgh would have finished strongly in the season anyway, I've no doubt. How does that feel as an Edinburgh fan? Do you think? I mean, it feels deserved. It feels like it's been building over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I always, when I speak about Edinburgh's progress, I always consider it not to be particularly linear. It's sometimes there's the odd step sideways or backwards. But I think even just figures wise, and if we had the season had carried on, I think we would have scored more points in the Pro League than we'd ever done in the last 10 years. Probably, qualified. I think we were almost guaranteed to qualify, even if it was in third, if the remaining games had gone against us. So it's definitely a big step forward, because this is, it's the first time qualified out of the Pro 14 league stages, first time into the semi-final, and we'll see what happens. And you're right though about the asterisk thing, and it will be there, and you can't get away from that. But I think given that once we had realised that we weren't going to be able to play these games the way the season the way it should have done, the games at Edinburgh potentially been left, if they go on to win this, have been 2 games against Glasgow, always difficult. Ulster, as we know, have beaten us quite a few times, even at Murrayfield, and then Leinster, who've gone through the season up until this far unbeaten. So if we win it, there will be an asterisk, but it's still deserved, because those are probably 4 of the hardest games you'll play in this league, and if you come through those with enough results to get to pick up the trophy at the end of the day, I think you can laugh off the asterisks that we no doubt will hear about if it comes to pass.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing, is that the last 2 games against Glasgow, like you said, they're never easy, because there's more than just the honour of beating your rivals at stake. Yeah. It's a chance to get one over on your opposite number who's in contention for the Scotland shirt. They're always hotly contested games, but I mean, they were almost like 2 pre-season friendlies in a way, because there'd been such a long layoff. There's a lot of ring rustiness. I mean, it's almost like I'm quite surprised, I think, the way around that the games happened, because it almost felt like that second game should have been the first in a way, because it felt like the teams were more rusty second time round. It was much more of a horrible mistake-strewn grind. It was one for the wasn't even one for the purists, I don't think. That'd be a stretch.
I think it definitely felt as if the second game was very poor, and it also feels as if it was played in a specific manner. I think I had to be looked to see. Both Doohan and Darcy, I think, barely saw the ball in terms of accepting broken play. I don't think either of them were passed the ball once out through the line, and in the kind of traditional manner. I think Nathan Chamberlain got passed the ball by Shield twice in the whole half from the back of a ruck. So they were definitely playing to a structure to minimise danger to important players like Van der Merwe and Graham. Van der Merwe, I think, was playing specifically because he'd asked to, because he felt he was still not quite up to his own levels of fitness in the first game. And to be honest, if you want to have Darcy playing in the semi-final, I think he needed to take some part in that. So he did plenty of running. I think he just didn't have the ball very much. And given we've only got 2 standoffs, even though we weren't going to play Jacko, they wouldn't want Nathan Chamberlain to be injured either, because then we're deep into the academy boys, to be honest.
Yeah. Richard Cockrell's was talking up Jaco van der Walt last week, I think, prior to this, saying that he's of international caliber now. You've seen a lot of him this season. Is that something you agree with? Is he going to be pushing? Because we know Finn Russell's going to be back in contention. All the right noises are there. Is that realistic for you, do you think?
I don't think in the first instance he's certainly not going to displace Finn Russell. That's just not happening at all if Finn's available. He offers an alternative off the bench. I think ultimately Hastings is a very similar player for me, and is probably heading in the same sort of direction as a style of standoff, whereas Jacko's a bit different. He's not, I think I said this to the guys last week, he's not flashy, and he's not doing too many tricks, but he's very, very solid. He's got a good defence. He's got as good a kicking game as either of those 2 guys off the tee, and probably out of hand maybe as well, but certainly off the tee. So he's got to come into contention. If you're looking to do the same thing off the bench as you've been doing the rest of the game, I suspect you're still looking at Russell, Hastings, Russell. But if you're trying to offer a point of difference and somebody who can, either close a game out or you need, for whatever reason, you need to play it a different way, that he is a decent shout.
Yeah, I suppose it's that thing, if there was nobody really below Russell and Hastings that you could call on apart from Duncan Weir, who was, someone pointed out the other day, had made an appearance off the bench in the game against France. I'd completely forgotten that happened, and it was 6 months ago.
Yeah, brought him on in the wing. Yeah,
but it's definitely it's a more, I suppose it feels like a better option, third option, because I'm not aware of, and you might correct me on this, I think he's an out and out fly half, whereas Hastings has covered fullback in emergency situations for Scotland before and done very well at it. So I'm not sure that Jaco van der Walt can play anywhere else.
Last season they tended to use, if they needed a kind of stand-in fullback a later half of the game, it was usually Simon Hickey that went there, and they kept Jacko at standoff. I don't think he has. I suppose a lot of the skill set. If Hugh Jones can play there, why not?
Can he play there, Sandy?
I thought he did okay, in fairness to him, to be honest. He's coming forward. Plenty of room. There we go.
Yeah, I've got a comment. Chloe Stanton says Jaco van der Walt came to us supposedly as a better fullback than fly half. So he's maybe, he's not been tried there, but who knows?
I think certainly the expectation was that that Hickey would, take the mantle and Jacko would not be the first choice. But I think over the last season he probably showed himself to be the better choice out of the two, and it may well have had some contribution to Hickey's deciding, along with budget concerns not to stay, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, what was your take on Nathan Chamberlain then? Because it was, like you said, you got 2 passes from scrum half in the first half. I mean, it's a hard game to judge on, but he did okay, I thought, given it's his first pretty much pro appearance.
Yeah, a few good tackles, got himself involved in it. I think between him and Shield, that was who Fraser Brown ran through for the first Glasgow try. Missed his first attempt at a penalty, but it was a fair old distance, and then got another one and looked. And I thought he had a couple of up and unders that were really seemed to hit the heights. To be honest, I thought were pretty good kicks, but there was no moment of individuality that you could really point to, and it seemed to me that he was being shielded quite a bit. Which is fair enough in your first game at that level,
Yeah, and maybe that's not a bad thing. I mean, there was a lot. I think we've talked before, particularly with when Adam Hastings started playing for Glasgow and for Scotland, there was an element of what's he doing? What's he offering? But I think there's nothing wrong with starting sure and steady and just getting the basics right.
Yeah,
and being protected. So
play your way in there.
Yeah, nice, solid, good. Again, it's a bit of depth for Edinburgh and a Scottish one at that. Yeah,
and I mean that's our two options. Our two main options as it stands. So, so he is going to get the chance. If not in the next game or in the final, should that come to pass, he's certainly going to get his chance over the next part of the season, because it was always, and I suspect it'll still be the same, is that we'll look to give him time off the bench, and that's always assuming that Jacko stays fit. If he doesn't and gets called up to the Scotland squad, then he's going to be required. So it's perhaps not an ideal scenario, but it's a great opportunity for him, that's for sure.
Yeah. In terms of looking ahead to the Ulster game on Friday night, then that wasn't a full strength Edinburgh side by any stretch. I don't think on at the weekend. Is I think everyone's available, though, aren't they? I don't think there's any big names missing. Potentially, he's kind of got a full squad to select from. I think Darcy's back, Duhan's back.
I think there's a possibility Jamie Ritchie might not be fit. I don't know. I know he had a hand injury that there was some concern about.
Stick some metal in him and send him on the pitch. That's what they normally do with Jamie Ritchie, isn't it?
That's right. I suppose the other big one was quite literally Ben Toulis, although I'm sure Cockrell said he would be fit for this. I mean, my concern about that, for him and Jamie Ritchie, is do you pitch them back in as starters for a match, potentially the most important match in the club's history, and having not actually played an actual game for almost 6 months. I think it's a step too far, and I don't think I would be going down that road to me. Certainly not starters, I don't think.
Yeah. And what are you doing front row then? Because I mean, it's interesting. I think that the front row struggled against Glasgow at the weekend. For coming back to, I don't want to kind of blow too much smoke up Glasgow's bum, but
yeah,
it's been a strength for Edinburgh, but maybe that was a bit concerning that it wasn't at the weekend, or was that just down to who was playing?
We were a bit lightweight in the second row, which I don't think helps. When you've neither Gilchrist or Toulis were playing, obviously your first choice. The young guys did well enough, but I think it was a bit of an issue. I don't have a feeling that Pierre has come back so far in the same form as that he left in, and I think potentially the man in charge of that shirt for Friday, Saturday. I keep changing my mind, just like the Pro 14. Would be Rory Sutherland for me. I was actually surprised. I went away and checked, because the match commentator on last week said that Pierre Schumann had given away the most amount of penalties for a prop in the Pro 14 this season. I thought, surely not. But
is that in the scrum or in the loose? Is that from him lifting up scrum pads?
It just said penalties. doesn't actually say. So,
Yeah.
but in fairness, they actually gave away 2 in the first 8 minutes on Saturday. So it's I would go. I mean, I think with the second row that we expect to have, I will go with Sutherland, and then I think your other 2 front rows would be obviously Stuart McInally and I think WP Neil.
Yeah, and then back row, Bill Matter, Hamish Watson, and Jamie Ritchie if he's fit.
Like I said, I don't know. I would if he's fit, he hasn't played. Do you find a place for Jamie because he is so good? Whether he's not played for 6 months or not, that's the debate. If it's not Jamie, then I would give that position to Luke Crosby.
Yeah, who's not gone to Glasgow?
No,
for all the talk earlier this season so far that we know of.
Well, it was certainly a relief to see him training in an Edinburgh shirt when the 2 squads were playing training at BT Murrayfield when they started up.
And then the back set, I mean, presumably you go with Henry Pyrgos and Yako at fly half and scrum half.
Well, Henry's another one, as I forgot to say, that hasn't played yet, and I'm not sure if he's. I'm assuming that's through injury. Otherwise, I'm sure we would have had him on. So in his absence, the Nick Groom, I would say, obviously over Charlie Shield. And if he is fit and they want him to play, then I suspect one or the other. Groom starting and Pyrgos on the bench. I think, given he's not played, that's probably the which is fine. My only concern about Nick Groom is there's something about his styly box kick that means an awful lot of them get charged down. I think there's been about 3 or 4 this season that and there was one on Saturday. I think I can't remember who the Glasgow player was that had a charge down early doors on Saturday. So
is that the angle he's kicking at? Do you think, or is it just the time? Is it a timing issue?
To me, it looks like the angle, but I'm watching it over and over again rather than just cursing when it happens. It's hard to be 100% certain, but his action seems to be different than what Pyrgos is, and I think I want to say he's left-footed, but I'm now not 100% certain. I don't know, but
let's just
go
with
that should make a difference.
Left-footed.
Yeah, he's left-footed. That's what the problem is.
What's the left-footed equivalent of a southpaw? I suppose it's southpaw, isn't it? It's still southpaw, isn't it? Because your foot's your paw.
South peg.
I'll be it. South peg is a south peg. I wonder how much positioning comes into it as well. Because I was over the lockdown. I did a podcast with Squidge looking back at Scotland versus Georgia in the 2011 World Cup, and Dan Park's positioning for clearing kicks, I hadn't quite realised how atrocious it was because he just wasn't sitting deep at all. He was kind of taking things really close to the line and then trying to clear it and getting charged down quite a lot. So you wonder whether or not it's an element of the forwards are offering him a certain element of protection, but if he's not in the right place to make the best of that protection that they're offering, that could be an issue as well. So an interesting one to watch out. I mean, probably something that I think box kicking is always something that Edinburgh get targeted for, but it's also something that you use quite a lot. Although I don't say that that's it's not that Edinburgh one dimensional. It's a string within your bow.
Yeah, and maybe that's I suppose if you take more box kicks, then maybe there's a chance that the percentage of the number of them that get charged down will rise. It might just be as simple as that, as frequency, rather than any inherent fault, to be fair.
Yeah.
So
the back row pick, I think the back 3 picks itself. You got Doohan, Darcy, and Kinghorn.
Yeah.
As long as Darcy's kind of not too ring rusty, and then you've got the centres. Though is an interesting one, I think, because who are you going to go as centre? Because it's despite losing Matt Scott, there's still a lot of depth there. I think outside centre's easy, and that's Mark Bennett. Inside, I would guess the choice for this match is down to Chris Dean or George Taylor. And given that Dean's played both of the games since the end of lockdown, it looks to me as if Cockle's trying to get him
right up to speed in order to start this one. So, but I don't. I mean, I think Christine's probably a better defensive player than George Taylor, but George Taylor's maybe marginally more offensive. So I don't think we lose much one way or the other. So I'd be happy with either choice. And I think just from I suppose there's an argument to be said. 3 games in 3 weeks when you've not played at all is maybe a bit much, but I think it'll be Christine.
Yeah. And then go on. I'm going to put you on the spot then, Sandy. Prediction for the weekend for the semi. I should get this right. The semi-final.
It'll be tight, and I think it'll be KJ. So 15-7 for Edinburgh.
Oof, 15-7. There's a bold prediction. I think you're probably right. I think it will be KG. It's not. It's difficult because both teams have only had 2 games, haven't they? And it's hard to know what kind of intensity you're going to get. I don't think Ulster are quite the team they were.
No.
But Dan McFarlane's doing good work there. But we'll see.
Yeah, they've not had 2 particularly good games since they were combating. I know that they are struggling with 1 or 2 injuries across their squad. So you're still going to have a good. I mean, I think that very similar in a lot of ways because it's more a team than a necessarily individuals that stand out. So, but I think it'll be tight.
Yeah. I forget, of course, Edinburgh's still in Europe as well, Sandy.
Yeah,
Just
got Bordeaux to play. Of course, we can get to France.
Well, that's the big if, isn't it? Whether or not it can be completed. Edinburgh season's alive and well. Glasgow's is a dead duck. So there's
it's not even pining. It's literally a dead parrot, isn't it? I'm enjoying this.
A Norwegian blue. He is deceased.
Or just a Norwegian blue.
There's the title. There's the title of the of this week's podcast, the Norwegian blue.
Norwegian blue.
We'll go on to the rest of a bit more news from this week. The European Rugby have announced the format for European Rugby for next year. Now, you need a degree in astrophysics to work out how they're going to do it. Basically, the top 8 teams from the Pro 14, the English Premiership, and France, top 14, are all going to be in one big tournament and I've got to get this right, I'm going to Stuart Bathgate's article on the offside line because I thought he did a very good job of explaining it.
I agree.
Even though at the end of it I still didn't really understand it. So 24 teams, 8 each from French top 14, English Premiership, and the Pro 14, including Edinburgh and Glasgow, divided into 2 pools of 12, with teams playing just 4 games each instead of the current 6 before proceeding to the quarterfinals. Teams will be ranked according to their final placings in the 2019-20 season, including the knockout phases of their leagues. So my understanding is, from an Edinburgh point of view, if you beat Ulster, you will be in the top seeds.
Correct, yeah.
If Ulster beat you, you'll be in the second seeds.
Correct, yes. I am on the same page.
Yes. So the teams are then divided into 4 tiers before being split into the 2 pools. In each pool, each Tier 1 team will play home and away against 2 of the Tier 4 teams, with the same process taking place for Tiers 2 and 3. Clubs from the same league cannot meet in the pool stage. After those 4 weekends of fixtures, the top 4 in each pool will qualify for the last 8. Clubs ranked 5 to 8 in the pools will compete in a knockout stage of the Challenge Cup, which will begin in a single pool format, including the remaining 14 clubs from the 3 leagues, 6 from the French top 14 and 4 each from the Pro 14 and the English Premiership. The 2 Pro 14 finalists will be in Tier 1 and the 2 losing semi-finalists in Tier 2. So basically, we still end up with 2 European competitions.
Yeah.
The pool split into 2 separate competitions after the pool stage.
Yeah.
There's 2 pools of 12 teams, but nobody plays everybody else.
No.
I'm sure they could have found a more simpler way of doing that.
I was trying to work it out. It would appear to me, obviously there's 4 extra clubs in the Champions Cup doing it this way than there was this year.
Yeah.
But we only save, if you go all the way to the final, you only save 1 game.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really seem as if we're gaining an awful lot, but it shakes it up and it might be interesting. And I think the same article you referred to, I think potentially if Edinburgh managed to get to the final, their English opponents could well be. I think it was Gloucester and Wasps or something. So it's some decent games to look forward to if that's the case.
Yeah, I think what I'm not clear on is that I think it means that Pro 14 teams can't play each other. Is my understanding of that, rather than it's Glasgow and Edinburgh. Glasgow can't play Edinburgh, but they could play Leinster. I think it's that Pro 14 teams can only play English and French teams. So
I just wondered.
Right.
I suppose we'll not know until we see the draw. But I wonder. Obviously, there'll be the pot tier 4, if you like, is you're only going to play 2. If you're in tier 1, you're only going to play 2 of the tier 4 teams.
Yeah.
And I wondered if the reason for that was that to avoid teams in the same league, there probably has to be a French team, an English team, and a Pro 14 team in the bottom 3, as well as in the top 3. So that way you would only play if you were a Scottish team, you would only play the French team and the English team.
Yeah,
and leaving the Pro 14 team off your list. And I suppose maybe that's the point of that, is to, we've already seen Edinburgh play Ulster, we've already seen them play Scarlets, so maybe there's more interest at a time when money is tight to watch them play Gloucester and Racing or whoever it happens to be.
Yeah, it does make sense, I think, when you think about it really hard, but it kind of feels like, and we've all been in work situations when someone's produced a really complicated spreadsheet, you spend 5 minutes looking at it and going, no, you could really simplify that much quicker in 5 minutes. It's just, someone turns up with a color-coded spreadsheet with 5 different tabs, and you think you could make that one sentence. Where's
Kevin Miller when we need him, really, yeah?
That's it. There was a sad, speaking of Kevin Miller, there was a really a sad start that Rob Harley had scored in 9 consecutive seasons, I think.
Yeah.
And hasn't scored this season, sadly. So that run came to an end.
Failed. What a shame.
We've got last minute. Ian Wallace has chiped in. Here's Ian's score prediction for the weekend: 26-12 to Edinburgh.
Confident, man.
We can but dream. Yeah. The other bit of news, which it's not so much news as a bit of speculation, that Japan aren't going to be able to travel for this glorious autumn festival of rugby that we're promised, or is being rumoured. So South Africa might take their place.
Yeah.
Which would be, that'd be interesting. It's whether or not it happens, though.
Yeah, it's an odd one because again, it's a bit like the draw for the Heineken Cup, trying to work out who's playing who and when, because are they not due to be playing New Zealand roughly about the same time? So it's kind of hard to work all that out.
It's just come out today that doesn't look like there's any Super Rugby happening at all. The Bledisloe Cup appears not to be going ahead.
All right, okay. So that frees them up then, and potentially, I suppose, even if travel is still an issue to or from South Africa, there's probably enough South African players playing in England and France to pick a squad from.
Yeah, the other thing, I think we mentioned this last week, the fact that the Southern Kings they've not gone under, but they've withdrawn from all competitions in South Africa, and from the Pro 14 for the moment as well, although it's not really, not that there's anything for them to play at the moment. But there is this rumour that the other 4 South African teams are potentially poised to join the Pro 14, or the Pro 13 as it is now.
Yeah.
So I suppose that potentially is a precursor to that, to show that it would be possible.
Yeah.
But only if you can open an air bridge.
Yeah, and I mean, forget pandemic stuff. That would be there. I mean, I feel sorry for Kings. I feel sorry for Cheetahs. Particularly, I mean, at the end of the day, Kings. I think we'd worked out. I think they'd won 4 games in their entire Pro 14 history. One against Glasgow and one against Edinburgh included. So as much as I'm still sad to see them go, they're it's the one place you can probably say they haven't added a great deal without being mean about it.
Yeah.
Whereas Cheetahs have been much more competitive.
Yeah, I mean, they always felt more like an advanced scouting party for South African rugby to come up north anyway than an action genuinely kind of go there to push for Pro 14. Was just, let's see how this works out, and then we can replace them with a better team if it goes well. The one bit of news that I've skipped over it because it was in the wrong. I'm not keeping to my notes in order. But Richard Cockerell signed the new contract. I meant to say that at the end of the Embra bit until 2023. It was Rob Robertson in the Daily Mail was speculating that this is succession planning on the part of the SRU, so that if we don't have a great Rugby World Cup, you've got a ready-made success for Gregor Townsend. However, I think as Tom English pointed out to Rob, he said, well, what's the other option is that we win the World Cup and then the SRU say, thank you very much, Gregor, we'll replace you with Richard Cockerell now.
Which I'm sure would go down well with everyone. He's on the BBC today saying that he does want to coach at test level at some point. He's made it very clear with signing a new contract, even in the lead up to that he still considers it to be unfinished business at Edinburgh, and he considers it to be his project that he wants to see through. So I'd like to see him coaching the Barbarians. And we've mentioned this in the previous podcast. He's played for them a number of times. There's the Quilters International coming up in October. Who knows whether we'll have Pro 14 at that point? But that would be a Barbarians versus England match with Richard Cockerell as the Barbarians coach. As he is now, considers himself to be an honorary Scot anyway, so it's be quite a nice. I think he's fairly settled in Edinburgh. I think, and he keeps talking. He sees Edinburgh very much as a project, and it's a little bit like he's been able to do what he did at Leicester, but from scratch. He came into that Leicester role having played for Leicester, so I suppose he was taking forward something that was given to him, something that he had been part of, and then he took that forward. This is something he's come in and he's created from the ground up, really, because for all we talk about Edinburgh success, you can't really point to anything pre-Richard Cockerell that sparked that or had any influence on where Edinburgh are now. No, I mean, it was perennial underachievers for the most part, and Cockerell has come in, and while I say it's not been linear, it has certainly always been it has always stepped forward, and you can't deny that, and it must be hugely satisfying for him to have taken a team that as we will all recall, that he berated for driving from the changing room to the training pitches, and we're more into. And he commented even again this week that he's now got a bunch of players who actually want to play for the club rather than just seeing it as a stepping stone international rugby. I mean, we all know it's a stepping stone to international rugby, but if you want to be a really good international player, you start off by being a really good a club player, because you can't, you don't, although I suppose if the Welsh seem to make a mockery of that, to be honest, at the moment, but I mean, I would say that you've got to at least be competing at club level to then go on and win at international level, and even just the if we can get both teams winning as much as we can, then that's a winning culture that hopefully rubs off in the Scotland squad and at large.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I disagreed with him on this week was when he was talking about he would welcome kind of a relegation. I think with people talk about the future of potentially creating a British and Irish league.
Yeah.
with 2 tiers, and he was saying that he's coaching players who've never known the fear of relegation, and I take his point on that there is an element of comfort within the Pro 14 that you never really have that hanging over you. You never have the relegation dogfight. However, I think one of the great things about the Pro 14 and how it benefits the likes of Ireland and Wales and Scotland is that it gives teams permission to go out and try stuff. So you're never really playing conservative up the jumper rugby because you don't need to. You don't need to kind of backs to the wall defend every game because your livelihood literally depends on it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a way of playing if you choose to do it that way. I mean, Munster have made a legacy out of it, but that's through choice rather than necessity. And I think it produces a certain brand of rugby. And you look in England and you look at the way, some of the England Premiership games are dull as dishwater because you can see it's 2 teams who are scared of ending up being relegated.
And I don't know if the facts would support it, but I mean, I've watched a wee bit of the English League this year. Once relegation was effectively taken away from them by Saracens' demise, and the games do seem to me to be more open as a result. And ultimately, they've been talking about closing the door. So I think it's a different Scotland, Ireland, Wales to a certain extent. It's a different model of club ownership. Obviously, all the English clubs are owned by sugar daddies and men that have just been that have been at the clubs and worked their way up or whatever way, but they're not owned by the RFU, whereas obviously the Scottish clubs are owned by the SRU. Irish clubs, I don't have the models exactly the same, but we're more there is more of a kind of emphasis on that step up to the international game for the kind of 3 Celtic nations, if you want, and I think that's not compatible with the way that the English have it. And I think we would. Bottom line is, I think that we might not be all that competitive in that because it's just not something we're used to, and it's not the way we play. Yeah. Never mind the fact that there's 12 sides in that English league. You can't take away the Italians because they're shareholders now in the Pro 14. So you've got another 12 clubs you would have to add to this league, and who wants to be in tier 2?
No, exactly. And I think that the other thing is that you don't end up with trusting your young players. Younger players don't get a chance because who's going to put that burden on a young player to come and go and play in a relegation dogfight. So you end up signing old journeymen that are tried and tested, who play until their early 30s, and then all of a sudden, no, hang on, I've got no standoffs left. I've got to play a 17-year-old rather than having somebody in. They've got that luxury in Scotland that you can gently introduce players into that intensity of rugby without the fear that if it goes wrong for them, that it might have significant consequences for the clubs.
Yeah, and I know I'm on about it at times, and when it comes around to international time, and when you lose players, and you're some of the younger guys get a shot, but at the same time I quite like it because it's great to see them, and it's great to see them normally some for Edinburgh at the end, towards the end of the season when they're we've run out of things to play for. So that's that is good to be able to do that. And how else, as you say, how else are you going to get them a chance without potentially destroying their confidence and having to play in a specific way that just avoids defeat rather than seeks victory.
Yeah, there was an article in the Herald talking about, I was kind of moaning about the quality of the game at the weekend between Glasgow and Edinburgh, and suggesting that the way around, that's because it's under SRU control and everyone been told themselves told to go easy on each other. That was a suggestion, very subtly, not so subtly put. I think you could argue that Richard Cockrell had, Edinburgh had the home semi, so what's the point? Why risk your players? The Glasgow players were, they're on the metaphorical beach. They're not allowed to go, they might not be able to literally go to the beach, but they were all on the metaphorical beach. So it was never going to be the same intensity. No. The solution in the Herald was we need to get ownership of the clubs back in, but I think we might cover that in a Patreon episode. I mean, it's not happening because neither club has any assets that you could sell to somebody. I mean, Exeter make all their money allegedly through the hospitality. That's how they fund a lot of what they do. And the SRU own Mini Murrayfield, but they're not. I can't see them selling that off to anybody to start hosting weddings in. But when you've got Murrayfield next door, which is however many times the size of Mini Murrayfield, Scotstoun's not owned by the SRU and it couldn't be sold to private. So without assets, which you can then use to make money, it's I don't think any English. I don't know of any owned club in a professional tier that makes money or doesn't lose money significantly. So you're looking at somebody who's got money to burn. You're looking at a Bond villain, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, on principle, I would like to see clubs not owned. I mean, by the SRU, but like you say, I mean, it's whilst it might be something you would desire, it's a bit like a third Pro 14 team that we might desire it. It's just not going to happen. We're so far away from that fact. We're even further away from it than we would have maybe been 6 months ago. So unless I win Euro Millions on Friday, and I'm looking for a vanity project. And even then, I think the SRU have said that they would, as it stands, they would only sell. Was it a 49% share? So they obviously want to keep control. So, you've got to have the money, the desire, and there's also got to be a product that can be. And what's in it for
you at 49%? It's
nothing.
like
because you're not got control of it.
Well, you're paying a hell of a lot of money for a corporate box, effectively.
Yeah, I started to work out how many years I would have to live to save on my season ticket.
Martin Bell is asking how much juice is in that can. I will point out, man, I've had 2 cans. I know I have 2 cans during the podcast. It's not the same can. It's, Chloe Stanton also, I should give credit. I'm not just ignoring people's comments, by the way. Chloe said she rejects the idea that guys like Ryan Wilson, Fraser Brown, Rambo, and Crosby would ever go easy in a game. I'm not suggesting that they would intentionally do that. It's more, I think, that players, whether unconsciously or consciously, will approach the game with different levels of intensity depending on who they're playing and what level they're playing at. So I think it's more what I was meaning is, I don't want to say it was a meaningless fixture because I know a lot of people got upset at Ian for saying that. But it was a meaningless fixture. But it's not the same. The 1872 wasn't even on the line. It was effectively, it's a Blues and Reds game. In the and the thing. Chloe says she wasn't accusing us of that as more the Herald. But yeah, I take the point. I think I don't think that was what was happening. But
like I said earlier on, I think Edinburgh, chose to play in a specific manner, which to give players, whilst they were obviously trying to win, because nobody would do that. I think the more important thing was them to get through it with extended runouts for the likes of Darcy Graham.
He's back.
And nobody to get an injury. I think it's as simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what they're after at the end of the day, isn't it? We're going to move on now. I think we've covered. I've covered all the things I've got to say in the news, and somebody said Somebody said on Twitter this week we end up talking about things for an hour and a half that could be covered in 50 minutes, and we're over the 50-minute mark, Sandy. So we're going to move on. We're going to do this now.
Well, we looked high and we looked low, and dug it back on in speedos, but I just want to know, did you see the legend that's Dougie Donnelly?
Yes, it's Where's Dougie Donnelly. This is the section of the podcast where we ask you to get in touch with anybody that you've spotted out and about, any kind of players, pundits, people loosely associated with Scottish Rugby. We've had 2 this week. We've got Ian Wallace once again, friend of the podcast and Beard of Scottish Rugby, says he saw John Barclay coming out of Scotmid in Collington Village wearing rugby shorts along with a natty flip-flop and sock combo. Unsure of whether he had paid for his shopping or if it was an endorsement. I think that's him gone down in my estimations. I don't I don't think any man that wears socks and flip-flops is... I don't rate any man that wears socks and flip-flops. It's a terrible combination.
It's not cool. It's just
No. I would imagine. I'm interested to know whether they were white socks. I would imagine they were. Black socks and flip-flops is even worse.
Although beach shorts and flip-flops and a hoodie is a very strange combination as well, which I've seen this week on somebody.
It is strange. I don't know. I don't understand why anybody would voluntarily wear flip-flops, because they're the worst shoe, or worst of any footwear to walk around in.
No.
I would rather be barefoot. You're tensing your toes the entire time.
I'd rather wear Crocs. It's that bad.
Oh, there's something. I'm desperately trying to find the other Where's Dougie Donnelly. I think it was on the podcast page. So let's see if I can find it now. It was an absolute doozy of one as well. We've got. Let me have a look, see if I can find it on the thing. There's probably an easier way to do this. We've got some hands in the ruck coming. Let's see if I can find the other Where's Dougie Donnelly that somebody saw on here. If I can find it. You haven't seen anybody out and about, have you?
No,
Sandy?
I've been no, not this week. I'm afraid. I've been.
Here we go. I found it. So I've just got a hands in the ruck. I'm sure somebody had got in touch with me, but we've only got a hands in the ruck from somebody. Maybe that's what I was thinking of. If you've sent us a Where's Dougie Donnelly this week, and I've missed it, then apologies for that. For some reason, I've been inundated with dimensions this week. I don't think anybody has. Don't think anyone's DM'd me either with one. That might have been where it was. Here we go. It was Neil Gibson. I found it. It was in my DMs. He slid into my DMs with... he was travelling home from work last Wednesday and he passed Callum Gibbons with a well-groomed but serious-looking dog in Partick. Looked like he was headed for a local bar frequented by warriors. Then in Bearsden, he walked past Darcy Ray. No idea where he was headed. And he said that was from Neil, not the one who comments on the blog. Which is, I thanked him for the clarification next as well. It was greatly received. The other person I should give credit to, we did when I was away last week. We had which Greg's pasties would Scotland players would Scotland players order, and Kevin Smith got in touch Kevin Miller, of Top of the Moon, got in touch with a number of suggestions, which are all excellent. And I said I'd read them out this week. So he said. George Horn would want a sausage roll, but he'd be in behind the counter and have it away before the staff could even get it out the oven. When asked what he wanted to order, Tom Gordon would respond, "I've no idea what's going on." Richie Gray would get his brother to order. Johnny would reel off all 43 players' orders from memory and would then deliver them all before returning to tidy the shop. Jail Vakalomama would give up on his order after 50 minutes because apparently no one in the shop could see him. Rob Harley would be thrown out of the shop after 3 hours of reading out his dissertation on the perils of high-density lipoproteins. Leone Nakarawa wouldn't get his order after deciding to spend the full day in Marks & Spencer's food hall instead of going to Greg's, which I think is what I'm staying behind in Fiji. After waiting for his order, 3 steak bakes, Aki Selui would prep a tray of sandwiches, serve customers, and overhaul the coffee machine, all while playing air guitar and singing to entertain the queue. And finally, Jamie Dobie would get his order, 2 yum-yums, for free after the lady at the counter took pity on him and said, "Och, you just save your pocket money, and this one's on me." So that might become a regular feature. I think that should become a regular feature. So if you know what pasty, what takeaway order a Scottish rugby player or one of the pro players would order, then do let us know. We're going to move on. We're going to do this. We're nearly at the end of this week's podcast. We're not going to come in under the hour, but we never do. So let's do this.
Hands in the rock, who has got their hands in the rock? Hands in the rock, hands in the rock, who has got their hands in the rock?
Yes, it's Hands in the Ruck. It's the Any Other Business section of the podcast where we like to have a bit of a rant about things not necessarily associated with Scottish rugby, although they can be. They can be good and bad. It can be things that we like, things that we don't like. Just it's a chance to have a wee rant. We've been sent one by Ian Hay, who's on a sabbatical for a couple of weeks. Ian will hopefully be joining us again, not in the not too distant future. He sent me his I think to get the own back from me last week, he's included lots of swearing in this because when I did my 3 hands in the ruck last week when I was off, I swore in mine. So Ian says it was Ian McGeechan saying Scott Robertson shouldn't be coaching the Lions. He says respect Geach to the hilt, but his reasoning is crap. He doesn't, and Ian McGeechan has said he doesn't immediately know Northern Hemisphere rugby. Ian's pointed out the Crusaders had 100% on their own line-out ball for the last 2 full Super Rugby seasons, which they won. So if over-reliance on set-piece plays is in your bag, he's okay at that bit. He says it's presumptuous rubbish. He won't know the players, like how Graham Roundtree had an in-depth knowledge of Ryan Grant. Is Tooney going to be popular with the Munster boys? It's jobs for the boys. He said, and if Stephen Jones gets an article printed agreeing, I will lose all the crap I have left to give. I did reply to Ian and say I disagree with him slightly. I don't agree with Ian McGeechan's reasons. I agree with what he said in that I think it's a representative side and it should be represented by people who are currently coaching within Britain and Ireland, which is why I objected to Warren Gatland being coached this time around, because he himself said when he didn't select Vern Cotter last time round, you have to be coaching in the country in order to lead the British and Irish Lions. Warren Gatland's coaching the Chiefs in New Zealand. So I wouldn't exclude Scott Robertson on any other basis other than he's not currently coaching in Britain or Ireland. Sandy, am I being fair? As Ian said I was being half-arsed?
No, I think, unfortunately, Ian, I'm on your side, Cammy. I've got, again, I think Scott Robertson's a fantastic coach. I think anybody who says otherwise is mad. Not that that's been said here, but I just don't think it goes to the ethos of what's required here. If the object is just to win and nothing else, rather than, which I don't think is necessarily, you want to win, but it's not the be all and end all for the Lions, then yeah, get him in because he's class. But he's, the British and Irish Lions, you've got to sort of be playing rugby. So I think in the British and Ireland, or Britain and Ireland, so I think to coach, you've also got to be doing the same. Yes. And like you, I agree that should rule out Gatland as well.
The other one, which hands in the rocks, John Anderson, who's not around this week either. He said his hands in the ruck is the Irish referee for Ulster versus Edinburgh. Wow, the Pro 14 don't help themselves. It's the D4 conspiracy, Sandy, once again.
Yeah, somebody actually asked me about that on Twitter today, and I mean, to be fair, I'd rather have Frank Murphy than Marius Maitreya or George Clancy. Even if he is Irish. I mean, there's obviously clearly nobody thinks that he's going to be biased. John, I'm sure, doesn't think that either. But they could have avoided the very suggestion of that by just picking one of the other referees. It's almost like they're doing it to be bloody minded. That to keep. So that to say, well, of course they're not going to be biased and they'll be impartial, and we're so confident of that, we'll pick an Irishman to ref it.
Where's Frank Murphy from?
I'm not sure if he's from the south or not.
Yeah, we need to. I should have looked this. I should have looked that up before, because I also think
that could have a difference.
I was going to say it overlooks the fact of how much some parts of Ireland hate other parts of Ireland as well.
Yeah, that's true.
He is. Let's have a look. He was born in Crosshaven. He is originally from Cork.
Right,
and played for Munster. So there you go. And he finished his career at Connacht and played for the Leicester Tigers. So I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure that we can, just because he's from Ireland, I don't think that necessarily means he's biased, given how much self-loathing the Irish have for themselves on some points. It would be like someone moaning that someone for Glasgow had gone to, referee an Edinburgh match. And then just because they're Scottish, it's like, well,
even if they'd only played 4 minutes.
Dermot Gormley gets in touch on Twitter. He said his hands in the ruck is me and people like me that complain about Glasgow's lack of signings and budgetary constraints while knowing the extraordinary financial landscape Scottish rugby currently inhabits. So it's doing my head in. So he's doing his own head in with that. But yeah, I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago, or we might have even been on the Patreon special. I can't remember where we talked about this, saying that actually Glasgow aren't in that bad of a place. And when you compare them with Edinburgh, both clubs are in. Just because Edinburgh are doing better, that's not down to players. When you really break it down, I think Kevin Miller's made a similar point that they've each got depth and strength in different areas. They're each as balanced as the other. Yes, Glasgow haven't made any signings, but you don't. That's due to the current climate, and Edinburgh are no better off, other than they're doing much better.
Yeah,
which we'll get that in there, Sandy. I
think Edinburgh are just lucky that obviously the contract work was pretty much done prior to COVID hitting. Would we have seen differently with Glasgow? Maybe, but the squad size is. I think Kevin's stats were the Glasgow squad was still actually marginally bigger. If we face it, they've had not a great season by their own standards, but if the season had gone to its fruition, they would probably still have qualified for the knockout stages. And so they still had so it's only really, whilst it's not been their best, it's only really been COVID that's denied them a chance to carry on, as they've had to rationalise it's only the top two from each. So, and why complain yet? Because the season proper for them hasn't even started yet. Wait till Christmas and then complain.
I think that's as well, because we've said before that Danny Wilson's coming late. He's not really had because of lockdown, really had a chance to put things right. So it's unfortunate timing, but at the same time, they got Leon in Nakarawa. Although they were paying him to build houses in Fiji for part of that, but still, you've got to be grateful for that. You got a world class lock, although they're going to be playing him in back row, I think.
Yeah.
What's your hands in the ruck, Sandy? And then we'll come to mine.
Well, I sort of had a good and a bad, and you've taken the good already by mentioning the Fraser Brown line from Richard Cockrell. That's amused me this week entirely. The bad one is for about the 600th time in the last 3 weeks, I've heard the same joke about the attendance at Murrayfield. It's that, Edinburgh, it'll not make any difference to Edinburgh. They're used to playing in front of nobody. And it's got to the point...
I made that joke, Sandy.
We've all made it at some point or another. But it's, oh my God. And Brian O'Driscoll is piped up this week. So it's reaching everybody. It was funny, and it was funny for a while. But can we let it go now, please?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair comment. I mean, my hands in the ruck probably follows on from that, in that I think it was fantastic to see that we got 700 fans into a live sporting event in Scotland, and that went well, and the feedback from it is that's gone well. I think what probably, and I don't think the SRU are completely culpable for this. I think the Scottish Government also have a role to play. I don't think the way that it was explained or marketed or publicized was helpful, because the reaction quite understandably is it's a different rules for rugby. And we've seen this come up before, that, and I know you and I have had slight difference of opinions on this, Sandy, in terms of rugby fans' treatment compared to football fans. But there is that impression that rugby's an elite sport. It's just posh people that go to the rugby, and we both know that's not true. But that's what it looks like. It looked from the outside looking in. If you don't know rugby, you don't know the people that go into rugby week in, week out. You look on there and you say they've got 700 people in that stadium because it's rugby, because it's posh people, but who they're lining the pockets of the government. They're the people that they're in the police. They're the establishment, and they're getting their games played. They're getting to go and watch their games. When in actual fact, the reality is that the way that Murrayfield is laid out, because you have almost like the stadium within a compound, it is much easier than any other stadium that I know of in Scotland for people to enter a stadium, to socially distance while they're there, and to exit and socially distance as well. I mean, it's not obviously there's but as well the immediate area around the stadium and the entrances aren't highly populated. I mean, there's a bloody screw fix at the back of Murrayfield. I went and got batteries for my dictaphone last time I was there for covering the France game. But it's not a immediately densely populated area, though. You have to go them through one. You can get the tram stops directly there, so you can ferry people directly from the train station, although I think people a lot more locally that were there. But it's easier to empty that stadium than any other stadium. It's easier for people to maneuver around the stadium than any other stadium. That's the reason why I think it was chosen. Although I think Scottish Rugby did some fantastic work persuading the Scottish Government it was possible. But I don't think enough was made of this isn't to do with rugby, it's to do with Murrayfield as a unique venue.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I mean, the other thing was there was so many of, I would imagine all of the 700 were in single digit EH postcodes. So, more or less just about within walking distance. I mean, those of us, double digit EH postcodes never got a look in, so they've been able to draw that pool in, and that probably doesn't help because it's obviously an affluent area, so it doesn't help with that kind of impression that it's only the elite that got in. No, it's just so happens that that's where the stadium is. I mean, if you're having to, I mean, without going into some of the other things to do with football, an awful lot of the clubs, their support bases are not that close to the grounds, and people want to travel from all over the country to go and see. And if you gave it to one club, one football club, the other football club would be moaning like hell about it as well. That's
which I suppose is that's the thing, isn't it? The uniqueness of professional rugby in Scotland. You've only got two teams. Yeah. And you're only letting one set of fans in the ground. You think, like you said, you do the same with football, and the number of clubs kind of multiplies.
Yeah.
Chloe's asked, do you think Jason Leach's attendance helped or hindered the perception? I mean, he's spoken a lot on the Scottish Rugby, the official podcast, about they've had him on quite a lot, but I think there's a public health thing there that they're looking at different communication channels. I don't know. I think I think it probably helped, if anything, because he's there to observe how it's happening. So then, and again, this is about the publicity, isn't it? If you can say he's here because he wants to see how it works, so he can then go and advise other teams about how you would do it. I mean, in essence, probably what would have been more sense is to say we want to play more games at Murrayfield, not necessarily rugby games either. You can play football games at Murrayfield, and like you said, it's that unique venue. But then the moment you've got people travelling in to Murrayfield and either parking or coming on public transport, the risk increases.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you're having a balanced view, Jason Leach turning up there is what you would want from your health guy. You want him to be there and assess how this has worked out, and whether it's because if we want to get back, you want to demonstrate to him that it works, and what better way to demonstrate it than in front of his own eyes? I mean, as a joking aside, I think he's a bit of a Glasgow fan, so it's what the hell was he doing there?
Has he got a single digit EH postcode, Ian?
That might have been his excuse. Yeah, I did see a Warriors top in the loosely mentioned crowd. So,
aye, it's an interesting one, that one. I mean, the other thing I would say is, I mean, I live within a spitting distance of Elland Road, and when Leeds got promoted to the Premiership, fans flocked to the ground to celebrate. I think there's an element of that in that. As much as we, I don't think that there was going to be a sea of people in salmon chinos rushing to stand outside of Murrayfield celebrating.
Just to be close, yeah. I mean, you only have to, go to any of the Scottish Premier football grounds to see the people just gather outside the main gates of the clubs to see the players arrive. So even if they weren't getting to the game, that's a likely scenario for folk, particularly if they live relatively close. So you're right about the perception. Reality, I think, is different.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. That's it for this week from us. We'll be back next week. We've got the semi-final to look back at next week. Other bits of news. We might be joined by, I assume, maybe be joined by John Anderson again if he can face spending an entire podcast talking about Edinburgh's success, or not.
You have to force him on.
But then he's got you to look ahead to.
Yeah. What you want to do, Cammy, is get an answer from him before the outcome of the match.
So I'll send him a message tomorrow. Are you up for the podcast next week?
Make up your mind now.
Yeah. Thank you very much to everybody that's watched live tonight. That went quite well. Quite enjoyed doing that. It's good interacting with the live comments. I think that's something that we definitely enjoyed doing. So more of that, please. If you haven't watched us live before, then there's details on the blog about the different ways you can do that and get involved. This will be available to listen back to anyway through the normal podcast channels, but this is just something that we're doing and we're quite enjoying. We'd be sat recording this anyway, so it's nice to do it with a wee bit of an audience as well.
Yeah, that's good.
So long as we Facebook don't ban us again. So that's it from us for this week. We'll see you all next week. Don't forget to sign up for the Patreon. We've just done a history of rugby sevens. Did that last night with Lee from Blood and Mud and the rugby historian Tony Collins. That was really interesting, especially because I got to slag off the SRU and public schools in Scotland quite a lot. So that was like very cathartic for me to do that. I know we started off being about sevens, and then it was eventually about the beginnings of rugby in the Scottish borders because I was there. So, but it's behind the paywall. It's worth listening to that. If you want to subscribe, it's only £3. You can have a listen to that. We've done another one as well. We did a Q&A where we talked. Ian and John and I talked about the difference between quiche and pizza and which one is best. And we also had a long discussion about the future of possibly having a third pro club as well. We got quite deep into that as well, and we'll be doing more of those as well. But for the moment, it is goodbye from me and goodbye from Sandy.
Night, folks.